what we're going to do tonight is called the relationship of Torah. And what I'm going to try and do is sort of create a certain concept of the unique relationship that the Jewish peoples have with the Kodesh Baruch Hu through Torah, and obviously in distinction to the Shem Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Now, in doing so, what we have found is that if you try to define the nature of the relationship that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is creating through the giving of Torah, it seems to be inherently contradictory and full of conflict. What you have is one viewpoint which seems to say that it was an imposition. Okay? Koifleim Harkagiyas, God says you better do this. And we saw this either in terms of you better do this because I'm God, or because it's built into nature. So there's an aspect of imposition. Now, at the same point in time, there was supposed to be a choice, because it was supposed to be a contractual relationship. But what you really find is that God created an inherent contradiction, right? The Gemara, when it says Mudar Rabba Lo Raisa, God forced us, but didn't God already know that? So it's like God himself is saying, I want you to be in a contract, but I'm going to force you, which inherently challenges the nature of this contact, but that's part of it. So there's these divergent elements, contradictory elements in the relationship. And then the relationship extends in terms of the classical statement of the agreement. Well, the Gemara over there by Kaifel and Harkis says that eventually they make a statement of acceptance that's very much from the self, okay, which is at Purim, but the classic statement of acceptance is Nasa v'Nishma, which seems to imply that we're going to do this now, even though we don't fully understand it, but we're going to work towards the understanding of it. And that working towards the understanding of it is understanding why it is a good thing, or why it's possible to do. Which leads into the next medrash, which brings in the idea of self. What occurs is that Kodesh Baruch Hu goes to all the nations and says to them, do you want Torah? And he specifically takes things that they're already obligated in from the Shem Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. And what you're really being introduced here is that I want you not, Kodesh Baruch Hu wants them not to commit murder. Under the Shem Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, you're not to commit murder because of, let's say, Gzeras HaMelech, because that's the law. And that really reflects law and order. That's necessary for society. What you see with the nations is they're struggling like, why is it that it's good for me to not commit murder? A reflection of my own being. And that's why they all bring up the question of their own psychology, their own essence. This is me. What are you talking about not to commit murder? B'nai Esav. This is who I am. Right? So the point is that if you're telling me I shouldn't be me, right, that because it's not good for society, I understand that. But if you're telling me that I shouldn't be me because that's not really me, because what you think is me or what it is, that's who I am. So it seems to be that in the acceptance of Torah, there's supposed to be some aspect of a self-understanding that says, this is good for me. Now, Ramosha says that what he understands, I think, from Nasa v'Nishma, is that you are to work to understand why it's good for you. Maybe in the beginning you may not understand why it's good for you, but the fact is, in the end, you should have an understanding of self, or you should be the kind of self that Torah is good for you. Okay. But what happens is this brings into the nature, into the whole discussion, our own selves, our own beings. So, and that's a distinction. Under the Noachite code, the Shem Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, basically, law and order is an imposition. It's necessary for society. Or you have to act this way because that's the way the world is. This is nature.
Who imposed Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach?
It seems to be that the Rambam says, to put in the language of the Rambam, okay, he says that there were tzivuis of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Adam Rishon. He says in the ninth parak of Hilchos Malachim, Al Shisha Dvarim Mistavu Adam Rishon. God, Adam Rishon was commanded in 6 mitzvahs. Then with Noach, the 7th mitzvah of Abraham Rachai was added. But it was God who gave the mitzvahs. And in the Rambam structure, it is a revelational system. The fact is that there is a whole issue in terms of looking at Torah mitzvahs Bnei Noach and its relationship to natural morality, which is more the idea of your own concepts. Now the truth is one of the major proponents of the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach is a reflection of natural morality, is actually Moshe Mendelssohn. Okay, in his book Jerusalem, his whole argument was that Torah was revealed law, and this comes from his whole world age of reason and so forth, but that ethics are from reason, and that's reflected in the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach. And there's aspects of natural morality. Now the truth is it seems to be that there are aspects of natural morality in the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach. There's mention of that in Reb Nissen Gaon in his Hagdama to Shas. Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, in his whole article about the role of natural morality, and says there is a natural morality which comes from reason. It's one of his famous articles. But the fact is it seems to be, though, that the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach basically have a revelational aspect. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is mitzvah, and that leads to the famous statement of the Rambam at the end of the 8th parak in Malachim, where he says, anyone who follows the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach is mechasidi u'mas ha'olam. Right? But he said, a non-Jew who follows the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach, is mechasidim u'salom and yesh lo chelam haba. But his language is hushi kabel oso v'yaso tamizeh shetziva behen HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'Torah v'odianu ayidei Moshe Rabbeinu shebeneach v'kudam nistavu hehem. So it seems to be that to be mechasidim u'samolam, you have to accept that God, in a revelation, which Rambam then goes on to explain to Adam Rishon, which he told us about in Torah, tells us that we have to follow the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach. But God is mitzvah. Okay, and then he goes on to that famous statement who says that someone who does it through Hechra Das, from reason, okay, he says that Ein Zeh Ger Tosha Beino Mechasidim Zolam, and then you have this famous Machlokas in Kirsa. The standards Rambam says lo mechachamim, he's not mechasidim u'masom, and not from mechachamim. But there's another gisa that says ela mechachamim. They're wise men. But the fact is the Rambam says they're not from mechachamim. There's an interesting from Yosheber. The Yosheber actually likes this gisa of lo mechachamim. It's usually you find the academics and everything else like modern stuff like ela mechachamim. They're not mechasim Muslim because that's accepted from Revelation, but they're chachamim. They're ethical individuals. The Rav actually says v'lo mechachamim, and he says, and what's the okay? Because if you look in the opening line of the Mishnah Torah, he says that the essence of chachma is yiras Hashem. So he says that if you don't have yiras Hashem, you can't be mechachamim. So he says it means v'lo mechachamim. That's the girsa he likes. Okay, what's the opening language of the opening language of the V'yada Chazah? Yesod. If you have the first chalik there, just in the first chalik, right there, Mada in the second thing, yeah. Should know this.
Don't you know you don't see anything which is right in front of you?
Right. He says Yesod HaYesod is
so quickly.
His language is Yesod HaYesod is for Amud HaChachamos, right? The pillar of wisdom. So the Rav says the Chacham is later Sheyesh Matzoi Rishon is to know that there's God. So therefore, you have to have a belief in God. It's the essence of Chachma comes from God. Therefore, he says a person who does not accept this revelational aspect is also not mechachamim. That's what the Rav says. Anyways, but the point is that the Shem B'nai Noach seems to be a law and order system. Okay, now this leads to what really is Torah about. So there are two halachas, or two mitzvot, that really distinguish the Jew from the non-Jew. Okay? Now the Rambam says, okay, in the 10th parak of Hilchos Mitzvot, Benoch sheratza lasos mitzvahs mishar mitzvahs Torah kedei lekabel skar ein mono tolo lasos v'halacha. He says they can do any other mitzvah they want, any other mitzvah. Okay? So the fact is, they can do any other mitzvah, but there's two mitzvot they can't do. What are the two mitzvah that Ben Noach can't do? So Shabbos and learning Torah. So he says, the Rambam says this in the ninth halachah, Akim she'asuk b'Torah chayiv misa. Okay, a non-Jew who learns Torah is chayiv misa. That's a whole issue in itself. It's a fascinating issue. There are actually people who hold that even for gerus you can't teach Torah to non-Jews. Right? So there's people hold that you're not allowed to teach them. He says, okay, but he says lo yasek al b'shem mitzvah shlehem bavad. They can only be yasek in their 7 mitzvahs. But kain akam sheshavos afil biyom mimosa chol. Okay, an akam who keeps Shabbos. Okay. Okay, imasil la'atzpa k'mo Shabbos chayv misa. A non-Jew can't keep Shabbos. Now, that's a powerful rule. So why can't a non-Jew keep Shabbos? Okay, Shabbos is the Yesod HaDas. We call people who basically the essence of defining someone as someone who is a observant Jew is a Shomer Shabbos. And here you have this mitzvah, and this mitzvah is only for Jews, and non-Jews can't do it. Now, if you think about it, the question really emerges is why do we keep Shabbos, and why can't a non-Jew not keep Shabbos? Okay, so in keeping Shabbos, we're basically emulating a Kodesh Baruch Hu. So we basically say the same way that God rested on the 7th day, we're going to rest on the 7th day. Right? It's a matter of emulation of God. Why can't a non-Jew keep Shabbos? Because it says in the Pasuk in Noach, Parshas Noach, that creation will never cease again. Okay? The language over there is, I should have the language here. It says that it says over there. Just looking over here, it's brought down from okay, the pasuk is brought down in the Gemara. Shenamar b'yom v'layla lo yishbotu. It's talking about the sun, the moon, and so forth. It says that creation will never cease again. It will keep going as normal, right? Because in the Mabul there was things with creation stopping. So what you're really saying is that Ben Noah,
when we had the Mabul, creation didn't stop.
No, but the sun, the movement of the vision, the sun, moon, it didn't keep its cycle. Okay. So the fact is that when it says over there in that pasuk that Yom, the pasuk is that Yom V'Layla Lo Yishbotu, it means the process of creation will continue. The sun will go around the earth will go around the sun, the moon will go around the earth, everything continues. Okay? That's the way it's supposed to be in creation. Okay. So the fact is though, is that what you're really stating is what is the nature of humanity? If humanity is part of creation, then humanity is supposed to act like part of creation. And that means that humanity is not necessarily supposed to emulate God. God is the creator. Humanity's job is to be part of creation. And therefore, what's being stated over here is that emulating God by observing Shabbat, that's not what creation is about. Human beings are supposed to be human beings that are part of creation. They can do what's necessary in creation. But to emulate God is not that's not their job. And therefore, if they attempt to emulate God by keeping Shabbos, that's inappropriate for them, except for Jews.
I'm lost.
Okay.
You tell me that my job is to emulate Hashem. That's why I keep Shabbos.
That's why a Jew keeps Shabbos.
Right.
Right.
But so you have to believe that the creation never stops. And what's wrong with the guy believing that creation will never stop?
No. The point is, no, it's not the fact that creation will never stop. The point is that what it's saying here is that creation is to continue its order. Okay? Okay. A non-Jew or humanity as part of creation is supposed to maintain its order, day in and day out. If a non-Jew observes Shabbat, it's not acting as he or she is supposed to act as a member of creation. It's outside of their directive as part of creation. That's what's being said over here. What you bring up, though, is a Jew is told to emulate God. And therefore, in emulating God, you basically can't just be part of creation.
So you're really above the creation, where the Gentile is actually a part of it.
So the simple answer over here is that humanity is part of creation, and as part of creation, it's not supposed to keep Shabbos, because creation is to act as creation. They are created entities. Emulating God is not an aspect of being created. It's not an aspect of being part of creation. The Jew, in being mitzvah in terms of keeping Shabbos, is told you have a special tzivui of emulating God. Okay? But that tzivui of emulating God means that you are not a simple member of creation.
So I'm not part of humanity.
Contradiction then. Okay.
So the truth is what you have this idea that we are created, okay, and human beings are created. In being created, we are to observe the rules of the creation, which is a function. When he says over here, Yom V'Layla Lo Yishmotu, the Creator created order. Especially you think in terms of the Rambam, there's nature, and things are supposed to happen in a certain way and order and so forth and so forth. We're supposed to go along with the creation. Okay?
We being Jews or we being humanity?
Okay. So the fact is that on the surface it seems to be that that's humanity's job. But the point is that the Jew in Torah, by being given Shabbos, is given now a new thing to emulate God, which means to emulate the Creator. Now, emulating the Creator creates a challenge to being a created, right? Because if you're a creator, you're not simply going along with being created. And you're right, it's a problem. It's a problem. Aren't we mitzvah to emulate God? Now,
from a practical point of view, where does it apply?
Well, no, we keep Shabbos. The non-Jews are not allowed to keep Shabbos.
No.
Okay.
Contradictions are fine. If you,
okay.
It's like a square root of a negative number. It works in math, but don't ask me to put.
Okay.
All right, you're asking me. There's a contradiction. Tell me where it applies.
So where was the classic presentation of this contradiction? This problem was Chava's problem.
Who?
Chava.
Okay.
Okay. What did Nachash say to him, to her? The Nachash never lied. The Nachash said, in order to be godlike, you have to know about good and evil. Okay? Now, the fact is that if you look at the nature of the human being, the human being is actually created with contradictory nature. On one point, he's a Tselem Elokim. Now, what does it mean to be a Tselem Elokim? Okay, now, if you look at the term Elokim, okay, when Elohim is used as a secular term, what is a reference to? A judge. What's a judge? A decision maker. If you look in terms of a Kodesh Baruch Hu, the definition of a Kodesh Baruch Hu is that who he is, his essence, is inherently in one with his being. But the point is that everything HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a reflection of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of his being. Okay? In other words, you know, there's a interesting statement I saw in the name of Yaakov Weinberg. Yaakov Weinberg said this whole issue, like there's this whole issue with ethics and so forth. Did God create ethics, or ethics basically God tells you? He says the truth is that when you read about Mahu Rachum and so forth, what you're saying is this is the essence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and his essence is his being. So the fact is the ethics of HaKadosh Baruch Hu flows directly from his being, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu is basically one who is a reflection of his own being.
So we could formulate everything you said into one definition. It seems to me, yes, the Jew and the Gentile are both createes, they've both been created. But the difference is that the Jew has to emulate God by keeping the Shabbos, and because the Gentile is on that lower level, he is not supposed to emulate these ways because he is going to appear as holy then as holy as
the fact is that
we can't be as holy as
what I'm looking at though is the original creation. Creation was creation of humanity, right? So the truth is the issue that Chava had was the issue that if I am created, what is the definition of an Eved? What's the definition of an Eved? An Eved is someone who doesn't make up his own decisions, right? The Eved's decisions are made by the master, right? The essence of being free or being your own self is to make your own decisions, and the greatest reflection of what we consider to be the reflection of one's own being is HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? He is who he is. And what he does flows totally from himself, right? No one orders God around, right? He is what he does. So the fact is that the argument to emulate a Kodesh Baruch Hu is problematic if you're also a creation of, if you're also given a command to be an Eved Hashem. That was Chava's dilemma. Chava's dilemma in many ways, and the Mepharshim point this out. I have a whole piece on this, it's on our website, it's called The Tree of Knowledge. But the fact is that the idea that you are a mitzvah, you are commanded, then by definition you cannot fully emulate God, because you basically, if you're an Eved Hashem, then your decisions are made by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But if you're told to emulate demands that you are somehow involved in the process of the decision. It flows from yourself.
I can understand the contradiction.
Yeah.
I may not be able to resolve it.
No.
Okay, but that's
Chava
fine.
couldn't.
Okay,
you're
that's
a good
fine.
company. You're a good company.
Good. All right. Why can't the goy
so wait a
have the
second.
same contradiction?
Yes, absolutely. The fact is that every human being has the same contradiction. What occurs is that the way I understand what's being stated here is that there are two relationships HaKadosh Baruch Hu is presenting to humanity. The first relationship is the relationship of the Shem Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. There's an issue, but the fact is the primary relationship which comes from the tzivoy of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Adam Rishon and to Chava was Eved. Chava had a problem, so how do I emulate God? How do I become a Tselem Elokim? True, that's a problem. And therefore, she made a mistake, if you want to say it that way, from eating from the Eitz Hadas Tov Ra. Because her primary, when the Nachash said, you need this information to be, to really be to emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to become something like Ita Kalokim. Okay, there's people who say that they were supposed to eat after the first Shabbos and so forth and so forth. But the primary statement was that right now you're working primarily as Eved Hashem, and therefore the first statement of the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach is basically Zeres HaMelech, which I'm applying to Moshe's idea. The fact is we're creations, and creations have to follow the rules. There's rules in terms of natural rules. There's rules in terms of imposition from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. These are the rules. And the fact is the fact that the Goy Shabbos is telling you that in the level of the Sheva Mitzvahs Bnei Noach, emulation now becomes secondary. Because you're not called upon to keep Shabbos, because you have to understand that you are primarily attached to see yourself as a creation. You can still be Mechassidus Olam Haba. Still get all. You still can become Mechassidus Olam. You can still get Olam Haba. You can still follow the Tzivui Hashem. Right? You can still be Eved Hashem. Right? And you have Yiras Hashem, Eov, or whatever. But the fact is the concept of emulating God becomes somewhat clearly secondary. When a HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives Torah, he says in the Torah, you have a command. Jews who accept Torah have a command of Shabbos. Now it's still a command, but the fact is that why is it a command? Because it brings into the element of emulation. Now, what's the greatest form of emulation? Is that you understand how this behavior is a reflection of who you are, right? Because the behavior, because the HaKadosh Baruch Hu is one in his essence. So the truth is the way the Umas HaOlam asked those questions and said, wait a second, I was Eved Hashem, I was being told what we should do. You're telling me to do this, okay, it could even be good for me. But in terms of the reflection of my own being and who I am, the Bnei Yisrael said, who I am is a murderer. Okay, if you're telling me an aspect of a reflection of myself, then what you're telling me to do is not a reflection of myself. And that question reflects the aspect of the Jew struggling of a struggle of Torah, of understanding how Torah is a reflection of the person. Okay? Now, it's still an aspect of Tzivui Hashem, because the truth is the human being inherently is created with those two parts. There's the Eved Hashem and there's the Tzelem Elokim. But the fact is what we are introduced in the Torah aspect is this aspect of understanding ourselves and how Torah reflects it. Now, Ramosha says that we can work toward understanding it. So he says, when he says that in Torah you basically find you can find the expression of human nature, of your own human nature. What he's saying is that we have to strive to understand how Torah is a reflection of who we are. Now, this leads into whole issues about the Torah's definition, the involvement of individuality in Torah, and the whole aspect of Torah really reflecting an aspect of individuals. But the truth is that if you take this, you begin to understand certain concepts in slightly different ways. Like, for example, let's say the famous issue of Lo B'Shamayim, right? The very nature of a HaKadosh Baruch Hu. I mean, Ramosha makes a statement in his Akdama to Tigris Moshe. He asks, why didn't God just give over Torah simply? You know, like straightforward halachas. Here it is, no questions, so forth and so forth. No, he demanded that you have to work everything out. Okay? And with working everything out, there's going to be machlokas. Okay? And he basically makes a powerful statement in one of his trufas that basically says that machlokas is inherently part of the very nature of Torah. Because human beings are different, and therefore you're all going to have a distinct outlook. what is powerful from that concept is that the Jew, and you see this in Lo B'Shamayim, is the Jew is involved in attempting to understand what to do. In other words, in a certain way, Limud Torah becomes the Jew's involvement in trying to be the decision maker of Torah using the constructs of halacha. So in a certain way, you're applying those constructs, but the fact is that you are involved in the process as a reflection of your being in terms of thinking. Now, you have to get this has to be approached very gingerly, because this kind of concept can be misapplied to think that any human emotion is acceptable and so forth and so forth. Obviously, you're talking about Limud Torah within the confines of the halachic system. But the fact is that Lo B'Shamayim basically says that Kodesh Baruch Hu gave over through Torah an aspect of the human being involved in the decision making. In a certain way, that's a reflection of Shalom Elokim. Through Chachma and so forth, a reflection of his involvement. So the truth is, when you think in terms of Nasa B'Nishma, the Nasa is a statement that basically says, listen, and this really comes from Kafir Harkikigas also in certain ways. The fact is that the starting point is that there's an aspect of the Avodat Hashem. We have to accept the fact that we are commanded, okay, to act pursuant to God's direction, because we are part of creation, and as part of creation, we are to follow the directions of the Creator. But the fact is that with the giving of Torah, and it's interesting, the two things that are pointed out by the Rambam is, one thing is Shabbos, which is based upon the emulation of God, and the other thing is Limud Torah, which is the process that you are to be involved with. The fact is somehow in the Torah aspect of relating, okay, there is an aspect that we as Jews have another dimension in our relationship to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a dimension of a more involvement of emulation. Now, does it mean the non-Jew doesn't have any aspect of emulation? No, because the truth is the Rambam says that Nakum can learn the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Okay, there's a Gemara that says that Nakum who learns Torah is like a Kohen Gadol. There's aspects of emulation that still may filter into the Noachide code, in terms of the Noachide process. But the fact is what really comes out with Kabbalat HaTorah is that the Jews in Kabbalat HaTorah were not just given Torah mitzvahs, we're not just given more mitzvahs and so forth and so forth. We're given a qualitative, different approach to relationship with the Kodesh Baruch Hu, because it basically highlighted the aspect of emulation.
Okay, well, this brings another question.
Okay.
Taking the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach as they're laid out until around Samim Parshas Noach, can you explain then why Sodom was destroyed, which means that sodomy, or may see homosexuality, was considered as a part of
okay.
Thank goodness there are no ladies here.
Right.
As a part of
the fact is okay. The fact is
adultery.
The fact is though, it's interesting. There's no doubt that the prohibition of homosexuality, of the male homosexual act, is part of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. Okay, which leads into a whole variety of issues in terms people have drives and so forth and so forth. That's one issue. But it's clear cut that the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach include an issue of male homosexuality. Okay, the fact though is that Stom, from a Jewish perspective, is not a reflection on that. It's a very fascinating thing that people don't recognize. When you hear people talk about Stom, the focus of their Isser, of their prohibition or their wrongdoing, is on homosexuality. That's where you get sodomy and so forth and so forth. If you look from a Jewish perspective, though, that was not the big Avla and Stom, right? When you look at the statement of Midas Stom, what do you find?
They didn't believe in tzedakah, charity. I mean, what is mine is mine.
What's mine,
yours is yours, and
that's it. So the fact is, the definition of Midas Stom is, as in Pirkei Avos, is that Midas Stom is what's mine is mine and what's yours is yours. Okay, and you kaifin on Midas Stom. There's actually an issue like this. Like, for example, if a person, let's say, goes up to, in the month of December, goes up to some property up in the Halliburton, and does not cause any damage to the property, but basically is on the property, okay, and does not cause any damage whatever, and leaves, and the person owned the property wasn't using it anyways, and had no intention to get any financial benefit from the property. It wasn't just not using it, he had no intention of renting it, and so forth. The fact is that you have no right in the Jewish court to get money from the guy. Okay? The fact is, and there's actually people who go further, that there's an issue of the Koifen in the Stom. There's some people even say that if someone has property that he's not using, and what I mean by not using is has no perception of having financial benefit and so forth, and it's just there and so forth and so forth, and a guy wants to use it, you can actually tell the guy you can go use it. The point is that it really reflects an aspect of a certain caring for others. Midat Stom was an extreme statement of what's mine is mine, what's yours is yours, is almost like I always think of the Simon and Garfunkel song, I Am a Rock, right? The fact is that it's like I'm by myself, you're by myself, and we think of evil as you don't bother me and I won't bother you, right? Right? And I already personally I'm a tzaddik, right? Because I take care of my own business, right? I don't help you out at all, but I also don't steal from you, I don't take from you, and so forth and so forth. And the fact is we're told by the concept of Midat Stom, that Midat Stom was this idea that you didn't help out others when you had the ability to help out others. Okay? And you basically just said, I'm taking care of myself, and that's it.
So how did this homosexuality aspect became so prominent?
Because that was
part of the story.
That's part of the story. But the question, but the fact is why did it become like that? So the fact is if you read the story, is that the people Stom said, we don't give anything for free, right? So they said, listen, you're giving people free lodging, you're giving people free food, right? That's not good. You're going to. It's almost like an extreme right wing. You're going to encourage, layabouts. You're going to encourage people to not take care of themselves, right? They're just going to live on welfare. Let's say like that, an extreme statement. So he says. So the way we look at the story is that they said, listen, you don't give anything for free. You got to get paid, okay? Otherwise, you're creating a taking society. So Lord says, but these guys don't have anything. That's where the homosexuality came up. Says, wait a second, they have their bodies. Use their bodies. It wasn't an aspect of homosexuality. per se. It was an aspect that said
You got to
charge
them.
them.
You have to
As a
pay.
Jew.
They charge them. That's it. You got to charge them. They have to pay. And therefore, when Lot gives his daughters, he said, "Listen, right? You're talking to. It's not just simply. Oh, you see how homosexual. They're heterosexual. Yeah, they would rather have the daughters, but there's a value here. By the way, there's a very interesting thing in what's his name, Aaron Levine. He was a professor at YU. He was a professor of economics, big Talmud Chacham. Also, he wrote a few books on Jewish business ethics. He makes the point that the problem with Stom is that it became part of their legal system. It was not just that these guys were basically selfish, self-sensitive. They had a whole legal system.
No, they legalized their
right. And they had a whole value system.
Right.
Right.
And that value system was the one that was a problem.
We have to charge for this. So it's interesting you say about Stone, but the truth is, in terms of your question, though, the fact is that homosexuality is part of the Shem, is part of the Yisurim of the Shem Mitzvah Enoch, and it raises the whole issue that is an issue in terms of what we're now seeing is that the homosexual drive is people seem to be born with it. So how do we understand it? And that's an issue we have to deal with. I mean, the fact is though is it's interesting because that's really what Torah is about. The truth is that it's interesting. I always find that the major distinction between a fundamentalist in looking at God's law, talking about fundamentalists, talking about non-Jews, of course, or people who have fundamentalist attitudes, is this is right, this is wrong. We live with it with the struggle. It's usher, but people are born this way. How can we understand it? What's going on? And so forth and so forth. And we can sit there and say this is usher, but
let me go back to Goyim not allowed to learn Torah.
Yeah.
It seems to me that what you're saying is if a Goy wanted to learn Torah as an exercise of learning, such as learning mathematics, just learning it, there would be no problem with that. If he's learning it as a Jew, where the Jew is learning Torah to be able to develop his character of a Jew, that's really what's usher.
And can I add to that?
The Nasa is okay, the Nishma is not.
It's an interesting thing that you point out. The fact is the Rambam's language is Akum Sha'asuk B'Torah.
Okay. That explains it.
So it's not just picking up and reading something and so forth. The Rambam's language is Asuk. The fact is that your theory is of interest. If it's an intellectual exercise, so he's not really looking at it in terms of Torah, it's just another intellectual exercise.
And we have the Bible critics learn Torah all the time, and they comment on it.
Yeah.
But they're not learning from a Jewish point of view, they're doing it from
they're not really seeing it as
intellectual point of view.
They're not really
not
seeing it as Torah. It's an interesting approach. You see, the fact is that this statement of a non-Jew learning Torah, it really, if you I've read through the sugya, and I know that there's tremendous issues on the sugya.
The fact is, learning what does this mean?
Right. The fact is that it's interesting because the Ram does use language also. And there are people who
Oisik B'Torah.
Right. Akum Sha'asuk B'Torah.
So getting involved with
it. Right.
So it's like to take something like, for example, Gemara Makos, where the Mishnah, you look at the Mishnah, and then the Gemara is saying that you're asking all the wrong questions. So they're open. But let's say when a Gentile asks me, where do you find the name Gershon? I'll tell him, look at the book of Genesis, chapter 47. That's not really learning Torah. That's
so the truth is, there's people who say the Yisr only applies to Torah Shabbat, not Torah Shabbat. Okay. There's other people there's other arguments. If the Jew is, if the non-Jew is, even the Rambam says it, is doing it to follow Shabbat B'nai Noach. Now, in following Shabbat B'nai Noach, then you get into a whole issue of what does that mean? It means knowing about creation, learning Bereshis. That could be part of the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, because there's ethical developments that are supposed to flow from the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. You also, when you talk about that, it's not so simple and like you see beforehand, if a non-Jew wants to follow the mitzvahs, it's okay. A non-Jew can give tzedakah, and the non-Jew should even know about giving tzedakah. So the non-Jew should know something about what's wrong with midas stone, because it's not good to have midas stone, so they should know that as well. So what they're trying to understand, the intellectual argument, it seems to be, the way I understand it is that I mean, the truth is that non-Jews do learn Torah, and for sure they know. And even as I told you, there are people who hold that with Geras, you can't teach them anything before they're actually Megayer. But the fact is that most people say yes, you have to teach them Torah
you
before
teach them
Megayer.
pure halacha, that's fine.
The fact is even that pure halacha also has to involve the ethical understanding of the halacha.
No, hang on for a second. Before I go into the mikvah, I'm not a Jew. I go into the mikvah, and the next 5 minutes it becomes Shabbos. I've got to know.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's not possible.
You're right, but I would not say that when you're teaching Shabbos, you don't just teach them the technical laws. You're going to teach them aspects of what Shabbos means, and you can look at mitzvahs say of the mitzvah of what it means tishbosu.
But you don't have to.
Well,
when
that's
I
part of the
teach
mitzvah.
my children when they're 3 years old.
Okay. You're right. You're right. The issue. Yisrael Salanter advocated teaching Talmud in universities, knowing full well that non-Jews would also learn Talmud. Right? And the question is why he permitted this. He says, well, this will create the positive image of Talmud in the eyes of the world. But he would also have non-Jews learning Torah that way. And I think what you're saying is that there is a distinction in terms of being fully involved in Limud Torah, which I think is part of the province of the Jew. V'yigitim bo yomim v'laylo. In terms of facts that we find within the Chumash or within Judaism, that we do tell non-Jews, and we do. So there's a distinction, and you're making a distinction in terms of telling facts for a person to know how to behave, and then when they want to become a Talmud Chacham, they should already be a Jew.
I'm sorry.
But
Go
it's simplistic. But I mean, I guess the ultimate goal of learning, well, I shouldn't say that, it is to understand better the whole hierarchy of mitzvot and follow this and that, right? Which is not required, right, from non-Jew. Not just not required.
Yeah, I think you see. I think you're right. I think it's connected to both. There's details, and then there's the collective, the overall perspective, which really, you can talk about the details of halacha, but then there's the overall perspective of what Torah is. In a certain way, this involvement in Torah, which brings out you as a self integrating with Torah, and being involved in the decision making, that's the province of a Jew, right? That seems to be what we're saying in terms of Nasa v'Nishma, as it seems to be the understanding of how we are integrating it into our being. The fact is that this issue of what a non-Jew can learn is a big issue in halacha. For some reason, everything escapes me right now in terms of certain aspects of details. But there are people who take very limited idea that you almost can't say anything to non-Jews. But most people say that you can share Torah ideas with non-Jews. But I think the way you're defining it in terms of being fully involved in the connection with Torah, that's part of being Jewish, and that's part of Kabbalat HaTorah when we said Nasa b'Nishma.
What you said last week is, went to Asaph and Shmuel, and it said, what's in the Torah?
Right.
And they could have listed 20 things.
Right.
But here's one. It says, I can't accept.
Right, because it's not me.
Because that's not me.
Right.
But you then said the nature of a Jew the nature of a Jew is to accept.
No, what I said is some people try to answer that by saying that the nature of Jew is to accept. What I think is what I said from my perspective is that Jews recognize, what Klal Yisrael recognize, is if HaKadosh Baruch Hu is giving them the Torah, then there had to be a solution to this dilemma. In other words.
Then why can't you say the same thing about Yisrael?
That was the Chachma of Nasa v'Nishma. I mean, Nasa v'Nishma basically was, I don't necessarily know why this is a reflection of my being right now, but I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to work through it to understand how it's connected to my being. Which Moshe then says that you work through it to understand why the Torah lifestyle is basically the best form of life. Okay,
see, everything you've said sort of fits, with the exception of why a goy can't learn Torah. Because if the objective is he's become Jewish,
okay. So the truth is that's really because of our universal nature. The truth is that the distinction between a Jew and a non-Jew on a certain level is a challenge to us. Okay, it starts with what is the distinction between a Jew and a non-Jew. So the point is if you have universal leanings, and you basically see in non-Jews that they are also struggling with these ideas, then you're saying, well, why can't he do it? Why can't he do it as a non-Jew? The fact is that that's where you get into stronger distinctions between Jews and non-Jews, the Yiddish neshama, things of that. I mean, the fact is there a unique Jewish neshama, or is it just the human neshama? But the more universal you are, the more you have issues with why can't a non-Jew also be involved in this? But so the way the Rambam would perhaps answer it is a non-Jew can be involved in this by being Megayer. Okay, if you want to be involved in this, you can be Megayer. That leads to a whole. I mean, there's a whole issue about this. That really, HaKadosh Baruch Hu originally wanted to have the solution offered for Torah for all humanity. He gave it to Adam and Chava. He gave it to Noah. Right? He kept trying to give it to everyone. Then finally he said, "Listen, I can't seem to give it to the whole group. Let me take out one specific group and give it to them, and then hopefully they'll get it. They'll build it up, and then we'll be able to extend it to everyone else."
Everything is fine.
Yeah.
Until you say you must not teach it. What's wrong with teaching it?
So the fact is, and you're right. The fact is that when you say this, the truth is I teach non-Jews. The truth is that people generally teach non-Jews. But the fact is that in a certain way, it seems to be that it is supposed to be a province of our Jewishness, and I think the answer is that it really should be that this is an aspect of being Jewish. Now, a non-Jew who does it, I mean, you have a Gemara that says a non-Jew who learns this way is a Kohen Gadol. So you have the answer that he learns this way within the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach. You know, and within the Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, you're not just talking about 7 mitzvot. Sheva Mitzvahs B'nai Noach, according to many people, might be all the Babas. I mean, the fact is that it's the Sheva Mitzvahs. You really count them out. There's it's like 50, 60 of the Taryag, more than that, so forth. And there's people who hold that, like I said, all the Babas and all the laws of, you have to do Gittin because it deals with contractual law, and they're supposed to have contractual law, and according to some Shitas it means our contractual law. So the truth is that it's really a lot of Torah that's available to them. You know,
we're going to have to go up in 2 minutes.
Okay. But anyways, the point is though is that this was the unique aspect of what happened with Kabbalat HaTorah. That you're raising an issue. Why was this thing for the Jews? But the fact is that Kodesh Baruch Hu felt he could only give it to one nation, and this nation had to focus on it. But It actually is supposed to have the universal side to it, from my perspective.